All politically correct. All politically correct. All politically correct.
Nima Ghulam Alipour is an Iranian and an elected politician at the local level for the Sweden Democrat Party. The Sweden Democrats describe themselves as social conservatives. They're also the only party that is opposed to the mass immigration project which is changing Sweden. As a result, they're completely demonised and excoriated by the mainstream politicians, as well as the media and the professional classes. But Nima represents the views of the little people. He spoke to us in a cafe. He described how local politicians treat him.
They try to put us out of the committees by making them smaller. That's one of the things they have done in Norway. So if you have a committee that are 9 members, they make it 7 members, so we don't get it. And when we ask them, why do you do that? No, we have an agreement and that's how we want to do it. There is no real explanation. In the districts we have citizen dialogue groups where politicians and citizens converse, and we're not welcome in those groups. So we're the only party that are not welcome in the citizen dialogue groups. There are politicians from all parties, and when we ask them what's the reason for that, we're the 3rd biggest party in Malmo. We have citizens who want to talk with us, and they say, no, you're not a democratic party.
Do people understand the difference between criticising immigration and criticising immigrants? Because
no, that's so painful. You know, going every day and people telling me, "Oh, you're against immigrants." No, I tell them we talk about the immigration policy. That's not being against immigrants. And people tell me crazy stuff. I was out campaigning and people told me, "Oh, why are you with these Sweden Democrats? They hate you." And I said to them, do you look at us? Does it seem that they hate me, or that we hate each other, or that we hate anybody? And I think it's partly media's fault that we have this distortion that when people think that the immigrants and the immigration policy is the same thing. And where we are now in Sweden, it is at a point where people think that anything but generous immigration policy or liberal immigration policy is racist. So
Nima's trained as a school teacher, a historian, and ought to be hugely in demand at a time when people are quitting the teaching profession in droves because of insecurity and violence levels in the school system. Unfortunately, because of his political associations, Nima can't get a job anywhere. He has the wrong view.
Well, I'm born in Holland, grew up in Norway. I'm used to speak my mind with no problems, but in Sweden you can't do that without getting in trouble. If you're not political correct, you get kicked out of the job, organizations.
Do you know of anyone that's happened to?
Yeah, a lot. Like I know a teacher that spoke her mind on Facebook. She got fired. So it's.
What did she say?
No, she was talking negative about the Islamists, not the Muslims, but the Islamists.
But she was not talking negative about Muslims. She was just about Islamists.
Exactly.
Right?
So, but here in Sweden, that's racism.
Okay, right.
That was one of the most difficult parts of my professional life here in Sweden. The irritation over that the people don't have courage to present controversial ideas and also the incapable to handle these things in the collective. And for example, in the institutional meetings happens often that I had some controversial idea and didn't like the proposed things, and I was arguing and fighting for my ideas, and then you suddenly see that everybody is drinking coffee, looking down in the table, and you are losing the eye contacts because they are some way not comfortable with the situation. Then we put together a little committee, and of course after that people forget the problem and somebody makes some decision somewhere. But there is also, when you go out from this meeting at the elevator, there are some people who come to you. It was very good that you said, Irene. Really, you had so right. Huh? You know, this it's very, very strange. You know, this how they can live with this kind of.
How do things get done in this country? I mean, it's a prosperous country.
Det är hjärntvättning. Det är bara, eller jag ska säga så här. 80% cirka då svenskarna är hjärntvättade redan hur länge som helst det har pågått. Och jag har inget svar på det varför man är så jävla dum, om man säger så. Men 20%, de just som röstar på SD och de som ser, de förtrycks just nu.
Ja.
Det är så det är. I Polen förtrycktes inte folket. De visste vad som pågår. Man på något sätt väntade tills det smäller. Men man väntade inte som en jäkla åsna. Det är något fel på svenska folket.
Ja.
Det är det som är det största problemet. Och sen det andra, det är just de 20% som förtrycks. Det är de som är de jävla rasister och nazister.
Förtrycks de på ett värre sätt än vad som händer i Polen?
Absolut. Absolut, det tycker jag. Absolut på värre sätt.
Ja.
Kanske inte just att både i DDR till exempel och i Ryssland tog man och fängslade människor.
Ja.
Men här förlorar folket jobb.
Ja.
De kan inte vara med i facket, de får inget jobb. Är det inte samma sak, ursäkta mig?
Kriminaliteten har återartat helt. Det går inte att jämföra 80-90-talet till dagens Malmö. Det slut bryr man sig inte. Alltså om ungdomar som röker i bussar och på kvällarna och bråkar och trakasserar passagerare. Alltså i Polen, de flesta skrattar åt i Sverige. Alltså folk vet vad som händer i Sverige och i Europa och Tyskland. Många som flyttar tillbaka till Polen, unga människor som vill stadga sig och bilda familj. De flyttar trots att de har levt bättre i västländer och jobbat och haft det bättre, flyttar ändå tillbaka. För att deras barn ska växa upp i vanliga, alltså inte som samhälle som i Tyskland, England och Sverige. Inte det, de tror inte på framtiden i de länderna, alltså vad gäller kultur och värderingar och europeiska värderingar och sånt. De vill inte leva i sånt. Alla vet vad som händer i Sverige. Det är svenskarna som inte vet.
Hur ska man hantera folk som inte vill ha mer invandring? Tycker du att Sverigedemokraterna behandlas rättvist?
Ja, problemet är ju här det att det bygger ju på så otroligt mycket okunskap. Rykten, man hör förskräckliga historier om den och den som har kommit ut. Plötsligt här då så tillskrivs all kriminalitet som överhuvudtaget inträffar i samhället. Det blir plötsligt då invandrare som sköter, som står för den delen. Nej, man ska vara lite grann skeptisk till de historier som man hör. Och det är ju också polisens egen rapportering. Är det så att det råkar brinna en bil? Ja, eftersom de inte då kan direkt förstå att det är ett elektriskt fel som förorsakar branden. Ja, då betecknar de som mordbrand. Mordbrand, jaha, nu är det någon sån där vettvilling som är ute i samhället på nytt igen. Jag tror att man måste vara lite noggrannare med sitt val utav beteckning på olika händelser i samhället. För att det skapar och vilseleder ibland människor och tror att vi bor i ett betydligt sämre samhälle än vad vi egentligen
Men ska man, många är ju inte informerade och är rädda för det nya. Tycker att man ska kalla dem för främlingsfientliga och packa ner på dem som media gör?
Nej, det är ju helt galet ju. Det är ju i regel hyggliga och vänliga människor. Men de har fått en del saker om bakfoten ju.
Sweden is a very successful brand.
It is, yes.
And sometimes when you see adverts for Volvo or IKEA,
Yeah.
they sell it that, oh, you British are so conservative, have some Swedish feminism.
Yeah,
And it's like
yes.
the company and the country sell each other, you know?
Yes.
IKEA relies on
Yes,
Sweden,
of
Sweden
course,
relies on
yeah,
IKEA,
yes,
Volvo, and everyone is talking with the same voice.
That's
Isn't
true,
that,
yeah.
Isn't that a very good success story for Sweden? Everybody loves Sweden. I mean, Sweden's got a fantastic reputation in the world.
Yes, that's true, and we have a very, kind of progressive agenda on all kinds of things. And yes, you're right. I mean, that's many profit from that agenda.
Why your dark secrets, you know? You'll just make yourself unpopular.
Yes, but you know, in academia, truth is the most important thing. So we are not really interested in what promotes the Swedish brand or the brands of various Swedish companies. We are interested in where the truth lies in various issues, and we're interested in fact checking and all that kind of stuff. So to the extent that goes against the Swedish brand, I mean, we have a problem.
And in a way, the new public management, the universities are now a brand as well.
Yes, exactly.
And do I get the impression that it's difficult for you as a professor to say this, but students was bought on a university brand, and if you have a difficult academic who is, you know, doesn't say the right thing, then that's a problem, and something bad about the media comes up, and then you know, it's easy to drop him rather than protect him.
Of course, yeah.
Punched, the producer's been punched, you've been run over, the cameraman, we've all been assaulted and insulted. It's best we leave.
Svenska medier tycker jag att absolut borde inte uttala sig om andra länders medier och speciellt inte kritisera dem. För det som händer i svenska medier liknar mycket den kommunistiska medier i gamla Polen, i den kommunistiska Polen som störs. Alltså man rapporterar inte hela sanningen, man rapporterar det man vill eller det man blir tillsagt att rapportera, och det är nästan ingen skillnad i Sverige. Alltså det är som finare på ett fint sätt, men själva mekanismen och roten är samma. Alltså ibland undrar jag om det kanske bara kommunister som sitter i medierna, i alla medier och bestämmer.
You could ask yourself, is multiculturalism in favor of social change or not? That is a very important question. And I would say that multiculturalists, as being leftists, you know, defended by people who perceive themselves as being leftists, they have a problem with the idea of social change. Because if all we have to do when we see exotic, you know, quote-unquote exotic cultures, is to recognize these cultures, because that's what also multiculturalism is about. It's about a kind of peaceful, passive recognition of the other and the culture of the other. Then there is an imminent risk that these cultures will not change. And you know, myself being a modernist, I think there is a problem with this, because, and this is a dangerous thing to say, you know, we might jeopardize a lot of things. It's a dangerous thing to say that it might be a good thing for certain cultures to change. And for instance, their approach to women, for instance, their approach to the state, the idea of the state, you know, a transition from the clan or from the tribe to the state, and notions such as freedom of speech, etc. And because if you say this, people, you know, you're asking for trouble, because people will tell you, well, so you think you're better than anybody else. Of course I'm not better, but I do think that there are certain cultures who have maybe been able to deal with certain things in a better way than other cultures. You know, if you talk about Jews in Malmö, the official discourse was that the Jews in Malmö were harassed by Swedish neo-Nazis. But if you go to Malmö and have a look, you will not find many neo-Nazis. You know, there might be one or two, but they are not responsible for the fact that the Jews in Malmö have left. Basically, they have left. So the threat, the reason why the Jews in Malmö have left is because they have been attacked by Muslims. Not all Muslims, of course, but Muslim groups and mostly Muslim young men. And you can't say this, even though it is true. So there are certain things you can't say, even though they're true. And there are other things you're free to say, even though they are not true, you know. So what you say as a multiculturalist, you go on saying the right things, which are wrong, but you can say them, and you should say them, because it protects you and it gives you a lot of friends, and you can write a lot of articles, and everything you say is bogus, but it doesn't matter. So social reality no longer matters. I think England is the best example if you want to talk about the failures of multiculturalism, but I think, save for Sweden, I think Sweden is an even better example. In Sweden, for instance, in academia, you have a hegemonic discourse, and it means that people are afraid to speak up, and this is dangerous, because then you no longer have a discussion about things. You have people who, like, you know, they wave their finger and they try to find out where the wind is blowing, and then they go in this direction. So you create a situation where people are nervously looking for appeal. They are nervously looking for maximum number of appreciation. And in society, also in politics, you have also a situation where there are a lot of things that you're not allowed to say. And you have, most of all, I would say, you have a situation where everything is being polarized. Where you have, I mean, if you would like to create a situation where you have right-wing fanatics who say all kinds of bizarre things, and then on the other hand you have the multiculturalists who say the opposite things, then you should have a look at the last few years in Sweden, because I think politicians, journalists, and the academia has, whether they know it or not, they have carefully created a situation which is, I would think, on the brink of explosion.
Right. Could you just describe the difference in atmosphere between Germany, where you worked as a postdoc, and Sweden? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so in Germany, I mean, you could, criticize anything and in any way you want. But then when I came back to Sweden here, I mean, I realized that the situation here is quite different. And here, I mean, if you give serious criticism of someone's research here, then you might be in trouble, actually. So that was kind of an awakening for me to coming back to Sweden in that sense. And I think that also in the UK, I think you have a quite different academic environment when it comes to kind of criticism that you can raise. I mean, we have a collegial system where you're supposed to criticize whatever you find objectionable, and I mean, without that, you can't really secure the quality of research and teaching. And so if that component is lacking, I mean, that's a complete failure of the university system in my view. There are actually severe threats to that kind of academic environment, and that threat is coming from various places. It's coming from new public management, which is management philosophy, which wants to turn the whole academia into some kind of private business. But it also comes from other parts of society. It comes from the government, who wants to implement its own political agendas through top-down governments. So you have all kinds of forces acting precisely in this direction of silencing criticism and making academia less independent. I think that there are certain agendas that Sweden is famous for, and so you have, I mean, the multicultural agenda. You have various agendas in various disciplines, like strangely enough in forestry you have a particular agenda for promoting the Swedish model of forestry. And there are also other areas. I mean, for instance, when it comes to prostitution, Sweden has a certain position where we are punishing I mean, buying sexual services, which is also part of the Swedish brand, so to speak.
Sweden. Did you think I'd forgotten about you? How could I forget about my favourite country? The only country to have a feminist government while simultaneously being the rape capital of a continent. Sweden's come up with a novel new way of addressing its rampant rape problem. Stop importing the rapists. No, arrest and fine the people who complain about it. One guy who said Muslim migrants were responsible for a lot of the rapes in Sweden was fined $1,265 for committing a crime of opinion. A crime of opinion. Now, where have I seen that kind of thing before? Swedish police officer Peter Springer is under investigation for merely observing that foreign-born offenders are largely responsible for the country's gang rape problem. Are people politically correct? But don't worry, because Sweden's feminist government is fighting back by changing sexist street names. Sweden is so politically correct. The police respond to those who pull the pin. Sweden is so politically correct. It hired a Muslim migrant to be head of its National Heritage Board. A guy who admits he hasn't, quote, read anything about cultural heritage, and opposes Swedes who want to protect their culture. Meanwhile, Iron Age Viking artifacts are being declared meaningless and
Allahu Akbar, 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 Allahu Akbar.
I heard some strange rumors. My old head of department, well, a friend of mine, she talked to her and she said, well, we don't know if he's a Nazi or not. And my very good friend, she was shocked, and for weeks she didn't say anything to me. And eventually she did, and I said, well, I'm not, but that's not a nice thing to hear. And then they were skating down, and then I was singled out, very oddly. So I lost my job, and Dean, my faculty, he suddenly made a complete U-turn, and he started attacking me. He said there were lots of problems with me, and lots of problems with the students and colleagues, etc. And I said, so give examples, I said. And he couldn't. That was like 3 weeks after my book had appeared. My book was not called A Critique from the Right, a critique against multiculturalism from the right, because if that would have been the title, they would have thrown me out, in no time. The title of my book was A Critique from the Left, and that must have made them very concerned, because the entire Malmö University College rests on the foundation of multiculturalism, as does Malmö, the city of Malmö also has a multicultural foundation. So they must have been pretty uneasy when somebody like me said that you've got it all wrong. This is a Trojan horse. You think multiculturalism is a nicely lefty, progressive, radical idea. It's not. My situation is not unusual, and I have a lot of good colleagues who still work at Malmö University College, and some of them have a hard time because they also question things that you're not allowed to say. They also question things you're not allowed to question.
What technique do your colleagues use in order not to get themselves fired?
Well, one technique is not to think.
The way that he's always called a hater is just completely unacceptable, and I think it's a real Achilles heel of the way Sweden functions, that he is just automatically dismissed. You always see this example of Eastern Europe coming up, and I always feel that one shoots over the target and loses credibility points when you say it's an East European society, and I've done that many times when I said it's like Soviet Union. It's obviously not like the Soviet Union, but on the other hand, it's not. It is a slightly autocratic mentality, and you've got to be able to say that and get it exactly right without kicking the ball over the goal, as it were, by saying it's a full-blown autocratic society, and he doesn't want to compare himself to dissident. I mean, all these Václav Havel, who spent 10 years in house arrests for writing. I mean, it's not like that, but you know, it's a little bit like that. If people get sacked, if people can't say what they want, if people are afraid of saying what they want on Facebook because of fear that Express and newspapers hacked every single person's internet account in Sweden, which is true, or this amazing fact that a lawyer was told to unfriend a friend who'd liked something that was critical of immigration because the employer, a law firm, had gone through her every single Facebook post and all her friends. That's amazing. It's amazing. There's a huge contrast between my Swedish friends. About half my Facebook friends are Swedish and half are not. My non-Swedish friends say whatever they like about everything, you know, but Swedish friends say nothing, completely quiet. One of the problems with imposing truth from above by ideology is that reality finally comes and bites you in the back. The Swedish elite have imposed this ideological truth about the multicultural society. But what does reality really look like? The trouble is, the critics are not listened to.
ونبشرهم بأننا على موعد أن نفتح روما كما فتحت القسطنطينية وكما ستفتح ثانية. إننا على موعد أن نحكم العالم كما قال الحبيب المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Who can stick from my guy? Oh, it's pretty hard. Poke animal with stick, take one. Oh, ew. Yeah. Oh my god.
I just film poking it.